All you guys, all you people. Yeah, no, they got rid of this sponsor. Quite a few months don't need to
Yeah.
and I have another. But,
Yes, exactly.
especially for those, you're spending more money chasing boxes than people want. Right. So, but I'm just wondering.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening. I will call the April 30th, 2025 Select Board meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. We have only one change to the agenda. The town manager's report will be postponed to another meeting. And moving on to announcements, Libby?
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. We are still undertaking tours of our island home, and people can schedule one with our operations administrator, Michelle Monroe, and the scheduling information is online. If people want to take a look at the current facility and see why we are seeking appropriation for a new project, a new facility. Town meeting, 2025 annual town meeting starts this Saturday, May 3rd at 8:30 at the high school. And when we say start at 8:30, it's starting at 8:30. Don't get there at 8:30. There's going to be a line most likely, so please try to get there earlier. The town clerk has some information out on the town website about what to expect at town meeting. We've put out a voter's guide and a lot of other information in a special edition of Town e-News, which went out yesterday, so we hope that people are taking a look at that. There's some new features in the voter's guide this year, and in continuation with what we did at the last board meeting, we were going to take a quick look at 2 additional informational videos that we did on 2 of the appropriation articles that are subject to ballot questions.
Nantucket relies on its town employees to provide essential services, but the island's housing challenges make recruiting and retaining staff difficult. Article 11 proposes funding for the design and construction of new town employee housing on Waite Drive, including 3 family homes and 3 duplexes with up to 20 bedrooms in total. This project aims to provide stable, year-round housing for essential town workers. This funding is contingent on voter approval of a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion vote at town meeting, as well as question 4 on the election ballot. An affirmative vote at town meeting and the town election will mean that the annual tax bill for an average year-round property valued at $2,058,091 and which qualifies for a residential exemption will increase by approximately $29.95. This funding will support design, project oversight, permitting, and construction. Providing workforce housing helps the town maintain essential services by keeping employees living in the community that they serve. Learn more about Article 11 and how it supports the town's workforce by visiting nantucket-ma.gov/ATM2025, and please participate in town meeting and the town election. Tom Nevers Road, a well-traveled route for cyclists, pedestrian, and drivers, is without a dedicated bike path, leaving safety as a major concern. Article 14 proposes allocating $6.85 million to construct a new bike path along Tom Nevers Road. This investment will improve safety and support active transportation like biking and walking. The funding will cover design, easement acquisition, construction, and other related costs. Investing in active transportation infrastructure provides safer, more accessible options for those who walk, run, or bike as part of their daily commute or for recreation. This funding is contingent on voter approval of a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion vote at town meeting and Question 3 on the election ballot. An affirmative vote at town meeting and the town election will mean that the annual tax bill for an average year-round property valued at $2,058,091 and which qualifies for a residential exemption will increase by approximately $14.66. A safer, more connected community benefits everyone. Learn more about Article 14 and make your voice heard at town meeting. Visit nantucket-ma.gov/ATM 2025 for details. And please participate in town meeting and the election.
Thank you. We just wanted to show some of what the outreach has been, and really strong kudos to our communications manager, Florencia Rulo. She's done an immense amount of work on this, and we're hoping that people have really gotten to see a lot of the outreach. So in addition to town meeting, subsequent to that, we have the 2025 annual town election that is scheduled for Tuesday, May 20th. Polls are open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the high school. Back to town meeting. This Thursday, tomorrow, the Finance Committee will be meeting at 2 o'clock, all online, to adopt any technical amendments, and there are a few. That will be followed by the annual pre-town meeting conference with the moderator that will be held at 3. And all of the Zoom information, if people want to attend that, is on the select board agenda. We have our 2025 annual committee, board, and commission vacancies and timeline, and the committee appointment process. Again, all links are right on the select board meeting agenda, but we've got a lot of volunteer opportunities for people, and we hope they'll take a look at what's out there and think about making an application. Lastly, I wanted to just mention that our sort of new environmental contamination specialist, Andrew Shapiro, he's right here. He is with the health department. I just want to introduce him. He is available to answer any questions about a PFAS contract on the agenda.
Okay, thanks, Libby. Select board announcements or comments? I know Tom has one.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just not apropos to anything to do with Select Board, but I did see online today that the deadline for the Massachusetts Real ID is May 7th, and if there's any Nantucketers that need one, to sign up to get one.
Thanks, Tom. Anybody else? Okay, not seeing anything. We'll do update for public comment questions, and I just need to open up the page. Okay, so at our last meeting, which was 2 weeks ago, Clifford Williams asked if Article 50 passes, who can engage with the Affordable Housing Trust Town Select Board. And the town response is, if the bylaw is amended, the planning board would be responsible for reviewing any applications under that article. Burton Balkine asked, on Baxter Road, now that the two principal members of Sconset Bluff Preservation Fund are appealing the Conservation Commission's decision, how is this going to affect the select board's partnership with SPPF moving forward? Does this now change the nature of the public-private partnership? And the response is the board has not yet evaluated or discussed this new development and does not have a formal position at this time. Brooke Gibbs asked, what is the select board's position on illegal immigrants on the island? And what plan do the board and town have for what would happen if ICE came here, and who would fill those jobs? And the response is the town of Nantucket Select Board has not taken a formal position on immigration policy or enforcement activity. Immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility and falls outside the jurisdiction of local government. The town has no information about current or planned activity by U.S. Immigrations and Custom Enforcement, ICE, on Nantucket. Based on general understanding, ICE activity is typically directed at individuals involved in serious or violent crimes. The town does not have a plan related to potential ICE enforcement actions, as these are not initiated or managed by municipal government. Regarding workforce impact, job vacancies in any sector are addressed by employers, not by the town. We understand these are complex and sensitive issues. While we do not play a role in immigration enforcement, we are committed to maintaining public safety and supporting a respectful and informed community. Veronica Bonet asks, what is the select board doing to ensure safety for the Vineyard Wind project going into the summer? And the response is the board has advocated for the federal government to require additional communications and safety measures for offshore wind projects generally. The town is not in a position to ensure that the Vineyard Wind project is safe. Campbell Sutton asked, kayaks and dinghies haven't been cleared at some public beaches. Do they become abandoned property that anyone can go and take or move? And the response is a little lengthy, but I'll go through it. The town of Nantucket maintains 2 designated public storage areas for dinghies and kayaks at Monomoy and Town Pier. These locations are equipped with racks and signage that clearly communicate storage rules and seasonal deadlines in accordance with Town Code Section 278-4J. Under the Harbors and Waterways regulations, the following applies. Between October 15th and April 15th, all dinghies that are not actively servicing vessels moored in the harbor must be removed from any permitted storage area. After October 30th, the town may remove any dinghy left in these areas. Once removed, the harbor master must attempt to contact the owner either directly, if known, or through publication in a local newspaper. If the vessel is unclaimed after 30 days, the removal costs are unpaid, the harbor master may sell the vessel at public auction to recover expenses. In addition to these designated areas, dinghies and kayaks may be stored on other public beaches provided they are neatly secured, do not interfere with public access, and do not pose a hazard to navigation. However, these areas are not formal storage zones, and any vessel creating a hazard or obstruction will be subject to immediate removal by the harbor master. Following removal, the Harbor Master Division will make every effort to locate the owner and return the vessel consistent with the procedures outlined above. Importantly, even if a kayak or dinghy appears to be abandoned, members of the public are not permitted to take or move it. Property disposition is handled through the Harbor Master's office following established town regulations to ensure fairness and legal compliance. If you observe a vessel that appears hazardous, please contact the Harbor Master's office so that it can be investigated and appropriate action can be taken. Okay, so that is comments from 2 weeks ago, and I will now open for public comment. And let me just get my online list up. Is there anyone in the room who, I see Emily coming to the mic. Go ahead, Emily.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land and Water Council. So given the Select Board's vote to postpone Article 81 at the upcoming town meeting in order to spend more time working on the license agreement with SPPF for the use of the town-owned beach for the geotube expansion project, I just wanted to make a comment and a request. I recognize that the Conservation Commission's permissive order of conditions for the project has been appealed and that more time is needed to complete a license. But I simply wanted to raise the obvious concern that the long-term sand deficit that was addressed by the Concom's order only addressed mitigation through the beginning of this year. And regardless of whether there is currently a permit or not, the existing geotubes are a structure that's on town-owned beach, and while they remain uncovered and unmitigated, they are continuing to do damage to the town-owned beach as well as adjacent beaches and private properties. So in your capacity as the select board, I guess I'm requesting for you to take a look at the MOUs and licenses with SBPF and provide some follow-up with an understanding of what options you may have and what you could do in the meantime from this spring until either a permit and a license or otherwise is established to try to ensure that the geotubes are maintained and mitigated with sand. I believe that all of your past MOUs and agreements have included a requirement that SPPF be responsible to provide the ongoing maintenance and mitigation. And even, I think, prior to filing the joint application for the geotube expansion, there was an agreement to bring the existing project into compliance. So I guess the general sense of my comment is that I don't think the Conservation Commission is the only entity with authority here. And as SPPF is now looking to the town as a property owner for a new license to expand the project, I'm just hoping that in the meantime, the town has some leverage to require that they prevent the existing structures from doing further damage by keeping them covered and mitigated in some way. So that's my comment, and would just appreciate some follow-up whenever it's appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Mary?
Mary Chalk. I'd like to comment on the town's public comment letter to the Grid Upgrade Advisory Board that was in the packet. The sentences that really concerned me was Nantucket offers a valuable opportunity to pilot innovative solutions such as NWA's virtual power plants, which really sounds like energy rationing, and advanced demand-side management strategies. Given the substantial costs associated with traditional infrastructure upgrades, including a potential third undersea cable, leveraging Nantucket as a testing ground, which could yield insights and scalable solutions with broader applications across Massachusetts. So my question is, what is the status of this letter from the town? And is it a draft, or has it already been sent? Who has been given the authority to leverage Nantucket just so we can get traditional proven upgrades by sacrificing us as a test bed for experimental, unproven energy projects? You know, commonly energy projects come at a large environmental loss, and we have Vineyard Wind off our shore, and that is an experimental project as well. Our island remoteness and isolation calls for careful, traditional, proven, safe infrastructure for our energy security. Has there been a public hearing on this? And if not, when will we have one? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Cliff?
Cliff Williams, how are you? Thanks for all the information you've been getting for me. I think we missed something, though. I think I asked for the criteria that was used for the potential purchase of the piece of property off of Fairgrounds Road for $6.5 million, whether there was a traffic study or a sewer study, or what the criteria was used in order to solicit the piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. Brooke?
Yep. Brooke Gibbs. Tom, if you would AI the project downtown for the flooding area, you guys have $2.4 million allocated for research and development of a plan for how to build the wall downtown for the flooding. Yes? It's coming up in the warrant.
Brooke, we don't go back and forth during public comment. You're welcome to speak and ask
Oh, okay,
questions.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just as a reminder, yeah.
Okay. Instead of wasting $2.4 million on hiring a company to design the retaining wall downtown, you can use AI, okay? It can do it in about 15 minutes. It takes elevations, it takes all the previous flooding information and data, and you can do it in about 20 minutes. So you don't need to waste $2.4 million having a consultant do it. This program can do it for you and give you all the options you want for the 6-foot and the 8-foot sea level rise and North Wharf and the steamship and the whole thing. So if you guys will look into AI for looking at that project, you'll save yourself a lot of money. All right? Cool.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. I have Hillary Rayport's hand up online.
Hi, good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead, Hillary.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to call some attention to some of the articles on the town meeting warrant, articles 42, 43, and 44. These have to do with accessory dwelling units. The purpose of the articles is to align our zoning code and the way we treat some accessory dwelling units with the state code, which now, since the signing of the Affordable Homes Act, gives everyone, every residential lot across the Commonwealth, the right to build a small dwelling unit. which is a very positive thing. But what I've been learning from speaking with our building commissioner and our planning department is that the way this is being handled on Nantucket is that, since we already have secondary dwellings and we have a small accessory dwelling unit, which we call a tertiary dwelling unit, we also have ADUs, accessory dwelling units, which are internal, which can be 800 square feet. So we can have a lot of distinctive individual separate dwelling units on lots. And the way locally our building commissioner is interpreting the new state code is that you don't just get one accessory dwelling unit, you get one more accessory dwelling unit. And this is resulting in the additional units on lots that are already crowded and in crowded areas and that are beyond what our zoning code really wanted to allow and felt was safe. So for example, in town, in the old historic district, if you have a principal dwelling unit, and let's say you have a garage and an apartment above the garage, you have that, by right in our zoning code. You can go to the building commissioner and then you can convert the garage space for your car. You can convert that to a dwelling unit, which is not allowed under our zoning code, but that's happening today. So my specific question that I hope can be figured out before town meeting is, could we get some really specific justification from our attorneys who specialize in helping other towns cover this new by right ADU law? Could we get some really specific explanation of why pre-existing small dwelling units already permitted on Nantucket and existing on lots can't be counted as these protected use ADUs? I've asked many ways and I really haven't gotten a detailed explanation. And I do think that we do have to be concerned about overcrowding neighborhoods in excess of what our already generous and very housing friendly code allows, especially because these small units won't necessarily create more year-round housing. So I would appreciate a detailed response.
Hillary?
And yeah.
Hillary, that's it. 3
Thank
minutes.
you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, any others wishing to speak in public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will, we don't have any new business. We'll move on to minutes, payroll warrants, and treasury warrants, and pending contracts, if we want to do them all four at once, or with pleasure of the board.
I'll move approval.
For all four?
Yep.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that is unanimous, thank you. Okay, citizen departmental committee requests. So I am pleased to say that we have a fairly large group from the project that is about to commence offshore, and that project is IODP3/NSF Expedition 501, Northwest Atlantic Ocean Offshore Freshwater Drilling Project. And I'm going to ask the team who are all online to please introduce themselves, and they're going to share some slides and give us a little presentation. So Erica, okay, I think you have permission to share as attendees, so as panelists. So if you guys want to take it away and introduce yourselves.
Okay, I'll start off. I'm Kevin Johnson, I'm a program director at the National Science Foundation in Washington, D.C. We are co-sponsoring this project with the International Ocean Drilling Program, and they will introduce themselves. But there's a team of 3 of us from NSF, and I think 2 from the science party on board the ship. So I'll hand it over to my boss, Lisa, to introduce herself.
Greetings, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Lisa Clow, and I am the Division Director for Ocean Sciences at the National Science Foundation, and I'll hand it over to Kristen.
Good evening, all. Thank you for having us. I'm Kristen Hamilton. I'm an Environmental Compliance Officer at NSF. Back to you, Kevin.
Okay, let's see. Dave, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name's David McEnroy. I'm a marine geoscientist from the British Geological Survey, and I'm based in Edinburgh in Scotland. and I'm here to represent the team of operational staff that is seeking to implement this project.
And Brandon.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting us join today. My name is Brandon Dugan. I'm a hydrogeologist and geophysicist and professor at Colorado School of Mines, and I'm one of the 2 science leads on this project.
Okay, welcome everybody. And who's going to take the lead on the presentation? David?
Yes, that will be me. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, good. Thank you. Yes, good evening. Thanks, everyone, for this opportunity to summarize our scientific ocean drilling project that we are hoping to implement this summer offshore Nantucket. So I represent a team of operational staff that are hoping to implement this project, which is called IDP Cubed NSF Expedition 501, New England Shelf Hydrogeology. And this is a collaboration between the International Ocean Drilling Programme and the US National Science Foundation. So I have a few slides that I'd like to show for your information, and then I'd be happy to take with the others any questions that you might have. So to get started, I'll just briefly paint a picture of our proposed project. So we're seeking to core into the subsea floor at 3 sites on the New England Shelf, approximately 20, 27 and 43 miles south and southwest of Nantucket Island. So at each of these 3 sites, we're proposing to drill 2 boreholes, spaced approximately 50 meters apart. So that's 6 boreholes in total. And we would like to core up to a depth of about 550 meters below seafloor in each borehole. So there's 2 boreholes at each site. One borehole will be to collect sediment cores, and the other borehole will be to collect groundwater samples. In 2 of the 6 boreholes, we're proposing to install a cabled sensor array, which will hang vertically down each hole. I'll come back to explain what this is later, but essentially this is a cable embedded with sensors which would run vertically down the borehole, and then there's a command module left on the seabed on the end of a short tail that comes out of the top of the borehole. So in terms of dates, we were anticipating starting the project tomorrow on the 1st of May. However, we have a slight delay in our mobilization, which means that we will aim probably at some point in the next week. The project would then continue for approximately 90 to 100 days, and it would end after the first week of August, approximately. So the vessel will be the liftboat Robert, which is a 3-legged liftboat, onto which we will install a land-based drilling rig. And I'll come back and explain a bit more about what that operation will look like after we say something about why we're doing this and the science that we're hoping to achieve. So with that, I'll pass over to Brandon, who can say a few words about the scientific objectives, and then we'll come back to me to talk a bit more about the operation.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, just to give you a little bit about the motivation behind this science actually started in the 1970s when the US Geological Survey drilled a bunch of wells from Florida all the way up to almost off the coast of Maine, and they discovered freshwater in sediments beneath the ocean. And since then, we've done a lot of advancements, technological advancements, subsea floor imaging, and now we want to go out and actually understand how and why and when this water was in place. And just to give you a frame of reference of the data we've collected and analysis we've done, on the vertical axis here is depth. So 0 is the sea floor, or sea level. And we're going down to 800 meters in this picture below sea level. And we're looking from the left, which is the north, to the right, which is the south, over about 125 kilometers. So extending from almost about 10 kilometers south of Martha's Vineyard, where we started our survey, to about 75 or 80 meters of water depth on the far end. And the interesting thing here is these colors, and these colors are telling us how easy or hard it is to push electrical current through the ground. And you can imagine that if the ground is saturated with salt water, it's very easy to push current through there. And that's blue, as you see in the shallow section where the ocean, or blue in the deeper section. And where it's red, it means it's harder to push electrical current through the system. And our hypothesis, based on that earlier drilling and a bunch of numerical simulations that we've run, is that this red lens that's labeled freshwater is either meteoric or subglacial water that was emplaced 20,000 years ago or 400,000 years ago. We're not quite sure. That's part of what we want to study, but it's displaced the original seawater that was there when those sediments were deposited and replaced it with fresh water. And so we want to do this three-site transect that Dave mentioned starting at 8A, where we'll drill down and sample the sediments and fluids above that freshwater zone that we've identified, within that freshwater zone and beneath it. We plan on drilling. We've done environmental and hazard assessments to drill down safely to 550 meters below seafloor. But we'll be monitoring our science and our data as we go down. And if we can stop because we've got all the information we need at 450 meters, we would stop at 450 meters. So 550 meters is the deepest we would go. Then we're going to move over to 3C, where we start to transition from red to yellow, where we're seeing a mixture of what we hypothesize as freshwater and seawater to understand sort of the extent of this freshwater lens, a little bit about how quickly or slowly it's moving. We can get that by looking at multiple sites. And then third, we'll transition over to site 4C, where you see very little yellow or very little red. And we think this is predominantly a seawater end member. So in sort of a chemistry or physics class, you can think about that as our control location where the world seems to be behaving in the way that we anticipate. And then we can compare that to where we see the freshwater and try to understand what's similar or different between them and how long that water has been there and how it's been moving around. And I will hand it back to Dave.
Thank you, Brandon. So this research is globally significant. This map shows the locations where large freshwater reservoirs are thought to exist under the continental shelf, including Nantucket, of course, but also in many other places around the world, including places that do experience serious freshwater problems. So moving back to our operations, I'd like to describe what we're planning to do in more detail. So as I've explained, we will use the lift boat Robert as our project vessel. This is a three-legged self-propelled lift boat, and as the name suggests, it has the ability to stand up on the seabed and provide a stable platform from which we can run our research operations. So the picture on the left shows the vessel in transit with its legs fully up. So this is what it would look like as it moves to the sites and also between the sites. On the right is a photo with the legs down on the seabed with an air gap in between of a few meters. So this is roughly what our project would look like when on site. So the top of the legs would be about 60 meters above the waterline. And then on the deck, we will install a mobile drilling rig like this one. It's a land-based rig which can be carried around on a truck. You may have seen these yourself doing site investigation work in various places. So as you can see here, the scale of our rig is a couple of orders of magnitude smaller than the kind of heavy rigs that operate in offshore industries. So this will be loaded on board and a special exit point will be created on the deck of the lift boat to allow the drill string to pass through and be lowered into the seabed. Now, I wanted to show you this slide to illustrate what the operation will look like. This is the lift boat lifted up with its legs down. The legs, if you remember, are positioned in a triangle. So there's one on each side of the vessel and one on the rear of the vessel. On the ends of each leg, there is a rectangular pad for stability. So these will land on the seabed and they'll create a slight depression as they settle. The pads will not sink very far. The seabed is mostly sandy and therefore it's not easily compressible. It's a bit like using sand as a bedding layer underneath paving slabs to stop them sinking. And then our drill pipe will be midway between the two side legs and it will enter the seabed under the lift boat. Now, then we'll core down into the subsea bed, and I've tried to draw this to scale to give you an idea of the depth that we're drilling to compared to the vessel. So what isn't to scale here is the drill pipe, which I've shown in purple. I've thickened this up on purpose so it's visible. So our drill pipe is about 5.5 inches in diameter, and if I drew it to scale on this diagram, then it would simply be too thin to be visible. On the end of the drill pipe, we have a coring bit, which looks like this. So this is basically an inner tube, which is the cutting shoe, and this gets pushed into the sediments under the weight of the drill pipe, and then the sediment cores enter the hollow center and get captured inside a core barrel, which can then be pulled back to the surface using a wire. And then behind the cutting shoe, we have the bit, which allows us to make the borehole and descend further into the subsea bed. So we will carry a few variations of this coring tool to cope with both very soft sediments and also harder layers should we encounter them. And here you can see the 5.5 inches diameter of the tool. And this is what we're hoping to recover, sediment cores. So these are essentially cylinders of sediment, about 6 centimeters in diameter, and these are recovered inside transparent plastic tubes. We can then describe and analyze these cores to obtain various records of how the shelf evolved through time. So this is one of the two main samples we will take. The other sample, of course, is the groundwater itself. So just to quickly recap then, our plan is to mobilise in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where the science labs and the science team will be loaded up. And then as soon as we are ready, we hope to set sail as soon as we can, possibly in the next week. And then we'll transit from there to our first site, which is MV08A, which is the site that's closest to Nantucket. The bridge crew, as we move through this area, will take great care moving around and through the wind farm activity that's currently going on. And also the crew will limit the speed of the vessel and be vigilant for any whale movements. And then we'll visit each of these sites in turn, spending roughly a month or just over a month at each site to carry out our coring work and our water sampling work. And occasionally we'll be resupplied by an offshore supply vessel, which will run out of Fall River Port. Okay, just to come back to the cabled array that I mentioned earlier in my presentation. So this is a kind of 2 centimeter diameter cable, which periodically has sensors embedded within it, and also some buoyancy modules as well. So this will be, once the borehole is created, this will be lowered down into the borehole and it'll be held down by an iron weight. And then we will let it go. We'll withdraw all our equipment out of the borehole, and then the borehole will collapse around this cable, forming a good contact between the sediments and the sensors, and it will be left in place for up to 2 years in the first data collection cycle. It will record data on its memory, and then at some point in the future, the researchers can go back and recover the data by ROV. So this is what it looks like on the vessel before it gets deployed. You can see the thin cable here, you can see the buoyancy aids, and you should hopefully be able to make out the metal rods, which are the sensor arrays themselves. And then this is what it looks like when it's finally deployed. So it's going down into the borehole by a couple of 100 meters, and then we have this 2 to 4 meter tail coming out of the borehole, and on the end of that there's a command module, which is where the power and the data is collected. So this is my last slide. For this project, we will open up several communications channels. We have an expedition website, we have a blog site which will be periodically updated, and we also have a sign up link to receive daily reports directly from the ship. So if you're interested in following what we're doing, I would encourage you to sign up and receive those daily reports. We also have social media channels through YouTube, Instagram, and Blue Sky. So please follow us if you wish. The last thing that I will add is that our project is publicly co-funded by the US National Science Foundation and also the research agencies of various IDP member governments. So that's 14 European countries and also Canada and a couple of others. So because of this public funding, all our results will be published freely online when we're finished. So that was a brief introduction to our project. I think I've spoken enough for now. Thank you so much for your time and for allowing us to attend your meeting at short notice. It's very much appreciated, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was really interesting. Any questions from the board, and then I'll take questions from the public?
I have one. Is there any chance that you will hit oil or natural gas or rare earth minerals? Are they there? And if you do, what happens?
So no, there's no oil and gas here. We, as a scientific research organization, we deliberately avoid those areas because you need a different kind of drilling mechanism and methodology to drill those areas. The geology is just not set up for oil and gas here. And certainly in minerals, no, there's the depths that we're going here and into the geology, there are no minerals. It's purely the sediments and the records that those contain and the groundwater that is our target. I see Brandon has his hand up as the chief scientist. He can probably say more.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, and so just to add to what Dave said, we're very confident that we won't hit oil and gas or minerals. At the start, I mentioned that this drilling was this freshwater was first discovered by the U.S. Geological Survey in the 1970s, and that was part of an assessment of hydrocarbons and minerals along the Atlantic margin, of which they found none. So we have that prior information. And then as part of our evaluation from the science side and the scientific ocean drilling, we have a committee called Environmental Protection and Safety Panel that evaluates all of our data. And it actually has oil and gas experts on there who look and make sure that there's no indications of oil and gas in the region. So we have drilling evidence from the 1970s and then industry experts who looked at it to sort of revalidate that we're drilling in an area where we don't anticipate these.
Okay, thank you. Malcolm?
Yeah. Could you just summarize, maybe in one quick sentence, the scientific question that you're trying to answer?
Yes, we're trying to understand how and when this fresh water was emplaced in sediments beneath the ocean.
Okay, that was concise. Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, well, I could say, well, so what?
Well, it tells us, so two things that we could discover is one is we could discover that by looking at some of the chemistry that it's of meteoric origin. So rainfall dominated. So that would tell us at the time this water was in place, sea level was much lower, 50 meters, 60 meters, and the shelf was exposed and allowing rainfall to come in. It could also show indications of glacial origin, which would mean that it's meltwater from the base of the glacier, which could tell us something about the glacial history of the region, how far the glaciers extended, how thick they were, how long they persisted. So a lot about the geological evolution of the shelf and hydrology.
So I'll follow up with, you had mentioned that this is a global project and it is happening in locations around the globe where water scarcity is a serious problem. Is there hope with this project of these resources being able to be utilized to address water scarcity around the globe?
We're trying to understand, like I said, the emplacement mechanisms and times and origin. That's our scientific goal. Whether this could be used as a resource or in a time of water scarcity or need, that would be up to the local constituents to use the data that we've provided to understand the hydrology, to understand management, governance, or sustainability. So we want to understand the processes that define it, but ultimately any use or protection of it would be up to the local residents, whether it be people in the US, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, just could
yeah.
I follow up
Go
on
ahead,
your
Mo.
follow-up? I mean, so the practical use is long-term and very theoretical. I mean, this is basically a science experiment to learn about the Earth.
This is directly a science experiment to understand the Earth and the emplacement mechanism. That is correct, sir.
All right, great. Tom, Don? Okay. Mary, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I have 7 questions, actually. My first one is, why did you wait until the public comment period was over to come here and give your presentation to the public? Our right to speak during the permit process has been removed. Also, if Nantucket
Mary,
experiences...
why don't we take them one at a time?
Okay.
And that way they don't have to remember all the
Okay.
questions. How's that?
Yeah.
Does anyone want to respond to that question?
Sure. So under the National Environmental Policy Act, we are required to prepare an environmental assessment. It's for any proposed agency action that does not have a reasonably foreseeable significant effect on the quality of the human environment, or if the significance of such effect is unknown. So we prepared a draft environmental assessment and posted it to the NSF website for 30 days. And we did provide notice to potentially interested parties, including tribes, fisheries, organizations, and companies holding wind leases in the area. So we've also been fortunate to have, this additional opportunity. It is outside the comment period, but we did receive comments, which will be reviewing and providing, addressing in our final environmental assessment that will also be publicly posted. Thank you.
Okay, next question.
Has the project received full and final permitting, and where can the public find that permitting? Also, and the final, as you said, the final environmental assessment, where will that be posted?
Sure. So the final environmental assessment will be posted to the NSF website. And if you Google NSF environmental compliance, you should be able to find it, or I can share the link with Select Board. So we are the funding agency, NSF, so we're not permitting the project. There is, however, a permit required under Section 10 of Rivers and Harbors Act by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I believe they post their permits as well. So that's ongoing. That we're coming close to the end of the timeline there, but we're still moving through the last few pieces of the environmental assessment finalization and the Rivers and Harbors Act permit.
So you can't start until you receive that final permitting, is that correct?
The research activities that are covered by the permit, yes, the research expedition would have to have the permit in hand before conducting the research activities that are covered by the permit, yes.
Okay, you don't have that yet.
No, so the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, to streamline the processes, defers to NSF as the lead agency for compliance with a number of statutes. So we're working through those processes in coordination with the Corps.
Okay. On your website today, there was only the draft environmental assessment and the comment period dates. Okay, so thank you. So this has never been done in waters relied on by our endangered birds, sea turtles, fish, and whales, or by a tourist economy. Multiple lawsuits are moving through the courts against the Vineyard Wind project that you'll be drilling in. Marine pollution on Nantucket from the catastrophic blade collapse in July is still ongoing. How do we know which impacts come from your drilling and which come from the Vineyard Wind project? How are you monitoring that?
I can jump in here. So from NSF's perspective, the place to identify and analyze environmental impacts is within the draft and final environmental assessment. So I would point those who want to learn more about those impacts to those documents. As I said, we did receive public comments that will be addressed in that final environmental assessment.
If Nantucket experiences an observable muddying of our waters, will you stop and terminate the project?
So I can start to answer that question. I think the first thing to clarify here is the volumes that we're talking about. So we will be discharging two materials. One is the cuttings from the borehole. So that's just sand, silt, and mud from beneath the seabed. That will be discharged over the side of the vessel. That will be less than 1 cubic yards per day. And we'll also be discharging the drilling mud, which is a mixture of bentonite clay, seawater, and starch. It's a biodegradable, environmentally friendly drilling mud that we've chosen specifically because it is environmentally friendly. And the volumes that will be discharged at, again, is less than 1 cubic yard per day. So given the distance that we are from shore and given the small amounts that are being released, we think there will be very little chance, if any, of any of that material reaching the shore. So if you observe a muddying of the waters around Nantucket, I can confidently say that it wouldn't be from our operation, that we're just simply not releasing enough material for that to happen.
If Nantucket experiences an observable, measurable loss of marine life, will you stop and terminate the project? I understand bentonite can be lethal to fish.
Well, if that loss can be attributed to us, then yes, we would stop. but I think that link would have to be made for us to stop. And again, we've thought very carefully about our impacts on the environment, on marine wildlife. We have to remember that our operation is orders of magnitude less in scale than wind farm development. We're a temporary project. We're only visiting a couple of sites. You know, the amount of disturbance we're doing to the seabed is really minimal. So we find it, you know, difficult to imagine that we're going to have any large scale impacts on the environment at all. So yeah, I think if something was observed of a scale, I would question that it would be down to our operation, and I think that link would have to be shown before we'd be ready to stop.
Just to add to that, thanks, David. Something that you'll see in the EA draft and final is the summary of how this project has been reviewed by multiple federal and state agencies, including compliance with Endangered Species Act, Essential Fish Habitat, and Coastal Zone Management Act review. So we don't anticipate the types of impacts as noted in the EA that you mentioned. Thanks.
Why are we risking contamination of Nantucket's salt fresh water supply with drilling fluids, bits, and seawater to answer a few of an ocean worth of unknowns? Seems like we should be protecting this fragile environment instead of drilling it aggressively. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Are there, George?
I have a question.
Just kindly state your name for the record, please.
George Ellis. The Vineyard Wind project, those blades were made by GE, and obviously the blade collapse and the fact that 66 blades were put up that were defective certainly was not anticipated. But the blade collapse has spread micro and nanoplastics in the ocean and in the seabed where you will be drilling. And we know that not all the Vineyard Wind blade collapse has been retrieved. So my question is, you know, are you confident that this aquifer is not connected to the aquifer that provides our drinking water here in Nantucket? And I might add that one of our wells has been contaminated with PFAS and had to be shut down. So we're sort of in an emergency situation here with water in Nantucket.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, was there anything else, or?
Well, that's the question number one. Is the aquifer, you know, connected to our aquifer?
So we're very confident that it's not connected to the sole source aquifer that you're using for your drinking water right now. That in some areas has been affected by PFAS and other microplastics. It potentially could be connected to a deeper aquifer on the island that was discovered when the USGS drilled the 6001 well near Milestone Road in 1975, which showed a deeper freshwater lens below 300 meters, significantly deeper than the aquifer from which you're getting your drinking fluids. And it's isolated from the shallow source aquifer. We know that from that prior testing. And one of our goals in this scientific study is to understand if that deeper aquifer is connected to the offshore aquifer that we're studying, but we know it's not connected to the shallow sole source aquifer that you use for municipal reasons right now.
We certainly hope so. I have a question concerning this, and I'm sort of reading or paraphrasing from the draft proposed, your proposed drilling here, that approximately 4 to 6 meters squared of mud per week is anticipated to be released into the environment during the drilling. But then the document goes on and it says approximately 43 cubic meters, which is really like 50 yards cubed. When you think about it, a half of a football field cubed of solids, and then you describe what the solids are. Fine-grained solids and fluids, mud, mixture would be dispersed by local currents. Is the 43 meters, the cubic meters, is that per week? Because it's not clear in the draft document.
So I must admit I'll need to check exactly what it says in the draft document, but I did look at the numbers again to try and get them in terms of daily discharge. And like I said before, we're looking at approximately or just under a cubic yard of sediments per day and less than a cubic yard of mud per day. While we're actually coring, of course, we're not coring every single day. There are periods when we're doing other work and we're not actually producing discharge. So I would use those numbers. I'll go back and check those numbers in the draft.
Okay,
I think we have stated them in terms of per week, per day, and also per borehole drilled as well. So that larger number could be maybe the cumulative total across a number of boreholes. I'll need to go in and check exactly how it's stated in there. But I think the numbers will be consistent. They're just stated on different timescales.
Then the draft statement says it will likely be dispersed by local currents. Have you studied the local currents? The draft document mentioned Nantucket Sound. I think the drilling is occurring in the Atlantic Ocean.
So no, we haven't studied exactly what the currents are doing. The point we were making was that the small volumes that we're discharging, they'll be locally dispersed by the currents. The currents wouldn't necessarily take them any distance. It's just that they would have that dispersive action, and because the ocean has got such a strong assimilative nature, that very quickly after a short distance, the benign materials that we're discharging would be, very thinly spread out to be kind of not noticeable at all.
Right. And there is fishing, sports fishing and tourist fishing off the south of Nantucket, by the way. The one other question about the draft document, it says that it's the boreholes are expected to naturally collapse. What's the probability there, and the possibility of this aquifer that may not be connected to our drinking water aquifer, but possibly could be, and those holes wouldn't naturally collapse? What would be done?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So there's a 100% chance that these holes will close. It's well known in scientific drilling that we've been doing now since the late 60s. The program actually has done over 400 projects over the last few decades and drilled nearly 2,700 boreholes, many of which were in soft sediments like what we're doing here. And all those holes close. It's a kind of natural law of the earth that an uncased borehole will close up. It just doesn't stay open. And in industry, when they want to keep a borehole open, they have to case it with metal pipe. It's the only way to keep it open. If they don't do that, then the boreholes will collapse. So there's absolute certainty that the borehole will close.
Good. I don't have any other questions, but I guess my question that's ringing in my head is, how could a project like this occur during the summer here in Nantucket after a catastrophic collapse at Vineyard Wind last summer?
Amy? Hi, Amy Eldridge. Thank you. You just answered my question, but I guess my concern is just letting you guys understand that we've had some significant issues with Vineyard Wind, and the community is very on edge about our natural resources and our tourist industry here. And so I think it's really important to understand the gravity of what's going to be happening out here. And if those boreholes don't close, what is the risk to that fresh water with salt water? Like if that's something that ends up being usable for us 100 years down the road, are we contaminating it by doing these drillings if they don't close properly? Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Did you guys want to add anything to that? I mean, I think the question the answer that there's a 100% chance it'll close kind of got us there, but yeah. Anything to add or?
I can just add that some boreholes were drilled off the coast of New Jersey in the 1990s through a different set of sediments, but similar to what we see off of Nantucket. And we did sort of the same survey of the colored image that I showed, that Dave showed. We collected similar data where it tried to image freshwater and saltwater in 2019, and we could still see that there was freshwater and saltwater differentiation, again, giving us further credibility that the boreholes collapsed and there was no contamination.
Thank you. That's helpful. Any follow-up from the board? Well, we really appreciate you guys coming, and just for the public's information, the slides presented tonight will be added to the select board packet online from tonight, and we have the contact information for you guys, so if the community has any questions, you can reach out to our communications department, and we'll make sure you get connected to the people who can answer from the project team. Thank you very much for taking the time tonight to present to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yep, and you guys, unless you really love municipal governance, you're welcome to log off.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
We won't take it personally. Okay, next up is the Housing Office, request for approval and execution of a regulatory agreement for Meadows One between the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, the town, and Meadows One AC LLC. Christy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this request is to execute the regulatory agreement that places the restrictive covenant on the units within Meadows One. And just to remind the board, this is a 28-unit apartment development in which 7 of those units will be income restricted to families earning 80% of area median income or below. And the others will be market rate, but all units will count on our subsidized housing inventory list. And these are contributing to an additional year of safe harbor for the town. And so the request is to approve this and have it executed by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, the town, and Richmond.
Okay, any questions from the board or a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. That is unanimous. Thanks, Christy.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have public hearings on shellfish aquaculture licenses renewal, and I'm going to ask Jeff I'm going to open the public hearing and then have Jeff.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great, Erica.
Yeah.
You can put up our memo.
Okay, so the public hearing is now open. Jeff, go ahead.
Sure. So we're here tonight. We have a number of our licensed aquaculture growers that are slated for their renewals. In the last set of renewals, which was their first long-term lease, we kind of synced everyone up to try to group them all together. So just to run through the list really quickly, everyone tonight that's on this list is eligible for all 3 of their leases. So it's 4 acres, 2 sets of 4 acres within the deep water lease, which is in the middle of the head of the harbor. And then there's the site in the overwintering area, what we call it now in the head of the harbor, Cascada, that each of those growers has an additional 2 acres. All of our growers right now that are in those areas are in compliance, and we're able to recommend all of them for their full 10-year renewal. The one that's a little bit noteworthy in there, if you guys remember a few years ago, we worked through a revocation process with Ted Lambrecht, and Sean Fitzgibbons did us a solid and picked those up. He's getting his last additional 4 acres that were originally part of Ted's with this to get to his full 10 acres. And we're excited to have him on board. Just for kind of a point of record for you guys, we had a full growers meeting last night. We kind of try to have one annually, sit everyone down and talk through issues. Everyone's excited to get going for the season and no real major issues. We're going to kind of explore some new areas. The one request that they've had us to look into is expanding the dates of that overwintering area to give them some more flexibility or potentially hold stuff even year-round with Division of Marine Fisheries, but that doesn't impact this tonight. So we're putting that slate forward. The other one that's listed on there, we haven't received a response from Charles Connors for his leases, so at this time, we're not recommending that those be renewed. We'll continue to try to get in touch with Chuck and figure out what his plan is, or his leases will simply expire and they'll go through the process of starting down the waiting list for those who are waiting for leases to be available.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Any questions from the board? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on the matter? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that is unanimous. And now on the matter, I believe the motion would be to renew 1, 2, 3, 4 licenses and renew and expand the 5th license. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Jeff? Okay. Do I have that motion?
I move to renew the licenses as outlined in the documents.
Okay, terrific. Do I have a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you. See you Saturday.
Terrific. Okay, next up is the town manager's report, which is an update on town infrastructure projects, road reconstruction schedule. And we just had a agenda meeting at 1:30, but I forgot who's taking the lead on this.
Okay, so I'm going to have a very brief intro, and then DPW Director is going to take the lead on it. We have obviously quite a lot of road reconstruction and construction going on right now, and we thought it'd be a good idea to give the board and the public an update on those things and explain the limitations and challenges that we are facing. So Drew Patnode, our DPW Director, is going to take us through this presentation, and there will also be input from the sewer director because a lot of these projects are sewer related. Drew?
Thanks, Libby. Yeah, Drew Patnode, Director of Public Works. Great. This is essentially our agenda for the presentation. It's a list of the projects that are currently happening on island, all over the island. Obviously, it's kind of hard to get from A to B without coming across one of these projects. We'll start with some of the bigger ones, the sewer projects that are going on, and of course, the Mass DOT project on Milestone at Pulpus. We'll touch on a couple smaller projects, airport projects, the water main project that's wrapping up, some work we're doing at the DPW island-wide, and some other things that are happening on island that involve roadway reconstruction, paving, et cetera. Erica, you can go to the next slide. Some of those additional projects that I mentioned are National Grid's L1 project downtown, which is a much scaled back version of a prior scope of work. It's an important infrastructure project downtown for redundancy in their system, and it includes Broad Street, Easy Street, Cambridge, North Union, India, and Coleman Court. Most of that is complete. I spoke with Kobo, the contractor for that project, just yesterday to confirm. All they have left is Easy Street work. They've already done the work on Still Dock, so they expect to be done pretty soon. Although Eric's given me a...
I'm just going to note that it's actually a 2-phase project. And so
beautiful.
Kobo is the first crew, and then the second crew, Electcom, started this week, and they are following Kobo, so they're going to be working along actually pulling the wires.
But it doesn't, that doesn't,
No,
doesn't require trenching.
They're just
paving.
literally
Yeah.
popping the manholes and going in, but people will see them around town.
Right. Certainly less invasive, which is a good thing. Additionally, we have, Wiggles Way down the street, for example, is another project that still needs some final paving. There's a sidewalk being installed, the driveways, the parking area, and some other town and affordable housing projects. Another big one is Richmond Great Point Development, obviously off of Old South Road. I included the image in the bottom right just to highlight kind of the scale of it. There are a lot of sidewalks and almost all of the interior roads that still need to be final paved. And I know that they're anxious to get those paved this spring. I'm kind of personally hoping it gets pushed off to the summer so we can finish public roadway work and that stuff can happen in the summer without disrupting traffic, et cetera. And obviously, we always have other private developments that are seeking, asphalt and time in Victor Brandon Corporation's schedule. And you can go to the next slide. So with that, I'll turn it over to David Gray to get into the C Street Pump Station Force Main project.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, David Gray. Just to go over a lot of the project, we have some ongoing stuff, some stuff that's been completed, and then some ongoing stuff that's going to be taking place. Looking at the list and what's in the packet, with the different colors. It kind of shows you what's ongoing, what we're doing this spring, and then what's going to be happening in the fall. It's been a very large project. We've had our bumps and our hurdles, but we've gotten through almost all of them so far. I did a walkthrough of the entire project today and was able to take and report on a lot of different things, what status we're at. We're currently waiting now. Almost all the roads have been prepped and ready for pavement. That's what we're kind of waiting for downtown. If anyone's been down in the Winter Street area, they're down there putting in the cobblestones. That's a job I know I wouldn't want, but those guys are really meticulous down there, and they're really doing a really, really nice job. It's the same crew that's done all the sidewalks and the curbing around, MTK. They have been phenomenal getting everything done. They probably did about 40 or 50 feet of cobblestone today, which is pretty amazing to watch the guys manipulate the stones and everything. So that was interesting to watch this morning. All of the big heavy-duty construction as far as line work has been completed, except work at the treatment plant, which is not part of any of the roadway projects. We also have the CMON project over on Pleasant Street, which will be taking place the second week in May, where we're going to pull up all that concrete that's there. That'll get final grade, and then binder coat will be on that for the summer, so that it will have an ability to settle. As in most of the other roads have all just had binder coats on them. It's to allow them to settle. So when it comes time for the final top coat, we know where to add fill or to grind them down or mill them a little bit. So there's still quite a bit of ongoing work to do, but we are following very closely with Robert B. Auer, working very closely with Drew and with stormwater, water, and sewer. So we're keeping very active out there, and if anyone has any questions on what you've seen or what's going on, I'd be more than willing to answer. But I could sit here and talk about this all night. So. Yeah, some pictures that we've provided. You know, all the streets have been final graded now. Now we're just waiting for Victor to come in and put down the binder coat. Half of Pine Street's been done up to Lion Street. All the sidewalks have been completed except some small patches that they're working on now on Pine Street. A small short stretch between Eagle Lane and Silver Street was done. The Silver Street stretch has been binder coated, and the structures there have been brought to the surface. And we will be doing some more work in the parking lot this fall. On drainage. We're going to be adding some more drainage structures, actually quite a few more drainage structures in that parking lot to be able to assist us with being able to retain some heavy-duty stormwater as it comes through if the main in Silver Street doesn't take it all. So it's going to just be like an overflow, but then it will ultimately flow down Silver Street to Consu ultimately. We put brand new drainage in Silver Street, so we're hoping to see some improvements there. This last rain that we just had, we had some issues on Pleasant Street, but we have a lot of sediment because of the road work that's going on. So we have to go back and do some more cleaning of some structures and some pipelines. So we're working through those as they come up.
I have a question. Are the sidewalks being reconstructed to handle cars parking on them or driving on them?
In a lot of the areas, they have been. Some of the other areas in the real historic area districts, not so much because of the curb reveals. We did have to take and design, for example, the intersection at Sparks, Pleasant, and Atlantic. We had to design that so tractor trailers could make the swing, wide swing, and they would be on the sidewalk. So the sidewalk, the bricks that are there now will be getting removed after some settling, and we're going to be putting concrete under the bricks so that will be specifically designed for the heavy load trucks. And all the other areas, we've used stone dust in for anticipation of some parking on some of the sidewalks. So,
as you know, it's my pet peeve, and we shouldn't be doing it.
I know,
but you know.
If there's any questions or not, other than that, I thank you, and we're moving along. And
Thanks, David. Any questions on the sewer stuff? It's been a long road. Feels like forever. Drew?
So the next project that I'll present is actually not even a Town of Nantucket project. It's, of course, Mass DOT improvements at Milestone and Pulpus. The scope includes widening of Milestone to accommodate a left-hand dedicated turning lane, widening and realignment of Pulpus to a T-shaped intersection with dedicated left and right hand turning lanes, an extension of a new bike path on the north side of Milestone that'll extend the bike path from Monomoy Road over to the Pulpus bike path where it comes out behind Island Lumber. And then, of course, there's also drainage improvements, infrastructure in these areas with a sediment forebay, a drainage swale off the south side of Milestone to help improve water quality that ultimately discharges out onto the water department's property. You can go to the next slide, Erica. I'm sure you've been through there. There's a lot of traffic from time to time. There's been a lot of work going on to date. The bike path on the south side has been entirely reconstructed, realigned to accommodate that widening. The drainage swale is complete as well, but most other elements either are at 0% or more like 50% completed. The bike path on the north side has been, the clearing and grubbing's been done, the gravel's been installed, has yet to be paved. None of the curb ramps at the intersections at the end of those bike paths have been done. The road widening, it was 50%. I drove through there later, just before this meeting. Looks like they're getting closer to 75 or 80%, because obviously the progress changes day to day. None of the final paving has been done on Milestone, on Pulpus. On the Pulpus Road section, Erica, did you have something you want to say?
I just, sorry to keep interrupting. I got an update today that at the beginning of next week, Victor Brandon will be milling Milestone Road, which is going to involve some traffic issues and slow down. So Monday, Tuesday, avoid Milestone Road if you can.
That's great, thank you. On the Pulpus approach to the intersection, there's some utility relocations that need to be done to accommodate installation of the final drainage infrastructure below grade, and then also be able to accommodate the road widening. Again, that's actually probably more than 0% right now. It looks like they've done maybe 50% of that widening. And they'll continue with the realignment through that triangle that kind of exists in the middle of the two separated approaches right now. There'll be a Belgian block median islands at the end of the Pulpus approach at the intersection. And then, of course, striping, pavement markings, signage, and landscaping, and all that stuff will be done at the very end of the project. Just, again, wanted to highlight, not necessarily a Town of Nantucket project. We are, as you can tell, Eric is very much involved in that project and keeping our ear to the ground on all that's happening. And Northern Construction is the contractor for that. You can go to the next slide. These are some smaller projects elsewhere on island that we also wanted to highlight in terms of just all the work that's going on this spring. Water main expansion west of the airport. The final piece of work for that project is full width mill and overlay of Nobadir Way off of Airport Road. That was milled last Friday, and we expect the final paving to be done in the next couple weeks. The airport runway centerline pavement was completed earlier this month, which took a couple days. I don't have any data on how much asphalt was installed, but I understand it was a pretty streamlined process. It's something that's kind of important for them to do at a very quiet time of the year for what is, I think, as we all know, the second busiest airport in New England. And then lastly, the airport dormitory project had a sewer extension component of that. The photo on the right is actually from last Friday when I visited the site, where they milled Nobadir Farm Road from Park Circle up to the project area. We actually also had them extend that further beyond the entrance to the soccer fields. And again, that'll also get paved in the next couple weeks. So one of those classic, it'll take a step back before we take two steps forward, but the end is near. Go to the next slide.
And just so everybody knows, CC Construction is going to be on Nobadir Farm Road tomorrow, starting at 7:30 in the morning to prep for asphalt overlay.
Excellent. So, of course, everyone wants to know when are these things going to be done? These are the anticipated, subject to change, tentative, completion timelines. Like I said, the airport runway was paved earlier this month, so that's complete. The dormitory project and the paving on Nobody Your Way for the water main expansion project, those are both expected to happen pretty shortly here in the next couple of weeks. National Grid, as I mentioned, is expecting to wrap up their project as a whole sometime in May. And then Wiggles Way, same thing, May or June. Richmond, they're looking to get everything wrapped up this spring. Again, I kind of put July in there, hoping that they can push this off so we can prioritize municipal public roadway projects. As David mentioned, they are coming into some major milestones on that project, which is, I think, 3.5, almost 4 miles long. All the curbing, sidewalks, and all the base and binder course pavement is expected to be complete before summer. Most, if not all, of the top course final pavement project-wide is anticipated this fall. The CMOM project's kind of in the same situation. So that was Vestal Street, East Dover, Pleasant, and King Street out in Sconset. My understanding is, I think David said second week in May. So second, third week in May, the contractor will be back out on island to reclaim full width Pleasant Street where the concrete trenches, adjust all the structures, catch basins, manholes, all that, and get the binder and base and binder course installed. Ideally, we would be able to do more top course final paving, but we do have a certain, a set number of weeks between now and 4th of July. And so we're obviously pushing very hard to get as much done as we can in the limited time that we have. And then lastly, Milestone at Pulpus, they will obviously have a summer shutdown period for that project. And then they expect to complete that in its entirety in the fall. You can go to the next slide. And as far as stuff we've been trying to accomplish this spring at the DPW, everyone's favorite topic, pothole patrol. It is our operations division #1 priority when the asphalt plant reopens, but it's certainly not the only thing that we do. It's spring, sports activities are starting, so we also have a focus on our parks and rec facilities. Gravel roads also take a beating in the spring because we get a lot of rain. So we obviously wear a lot of hats, but we understand that potholes is something that everyone deals with, and it's New England. We get potholes, and it's something we are acutely aware of. In the winter, we use a cold patch. It's called UPM. It comes in bags. It works pretty well, but it's not a viable long-term solution. So again, when it's spring and we can get asphalt from the plant after it opens, that is our first and foremost priority. And then we have an infrared machine, which is really handy, and it lends itself to much better kind of sustainable long-term patches. For example, on the photo on the right is from yesterday. Our crew was out patching the pothole that's famously in Lake Monahans at Gate 30B. The infrared machine heats up the road and makes the patch contiguous with the existing asphalt, but it's something that in February, March, even early April, when it's really cold, it can take a half a day or a whole day to really make that happen, and it's really not a timely process. So once the weather breaks, and obviously it's been pretty nice recently, this is the time of year that we can really roll that thing out and put it into service. So I'm sure you guys will be seeing a lot more of that out and about. You go to the next slide. Something we prioritize early in the spring and late in the fall when the asphalt plant isn't open and making mix is sidewalks, curbing, and cobblestones. The photos on the right are from North Water Street. As soon as Victor was back open, or his guys were back from their winter layoff, we sent them out there to do curbing, cobblestone, and sidewalk improvements, spot repairs between Broad Street and C Street and Step Lane. We are also working hard to try to find opportunities to get roadway and sidewalk and curbing maintenance projects accomplished in the summer. For example, last summer we were successful in replacing a lot of the sidewalk on Amelia Drive, which was kind of littered with trip hazards. Really successful, not very impactful to businesses. Obviously, a lot of communication comes along with that. But when we can, we try to maximize the summer season as well. But obviously, there are plenty of places that are no-go in summer because of traffic. And then, I wanted to highlight a number of projects that we've accomplished, sidewalks, sidewalk related, especially in the downtown core. And we're starting to kind of expand out from that. But in the last 12 months, we've had a lot of work on Center Street, Federal Street, South Water, Candle Street, and as I mentioned, Amelia, North Water, and then even little things like installing new curb ramps in conjunction with the Commission on Disabilities and other requests. For example, like the ones on Orange Street that help improve accessibility to Marine Home Center, Bayberry Court, et cetera. I did want to highlight, the sidewalk and curbing work always looks really great and gets, I feel like, a lot of applause, but it's very labor intensive. It takes a long time. It can take a couple weeks to do a good block of downtown curbing and sidewalk and to do it right. Asphalt paving, on the other hand, is very costly. It's a high material cost. It happens a little quicker, but as you can see from all the projects that we've highlighted this evening, we are competing with a lot of other work to do improvements island-wide. So we're constantly trying to find opportunities to get as much done when and where we can. To go to the next slide. As I mentioned, like King Street, Pleasant Street, Nobody or Farm Road, where these other projects are happening, I've tried to find opportunities to kind of piggyback on those efforts and extend paving further than may have otherwise been planned. So King Street, the sewer project was probably 60 or 75% of the length of the road. And, while they were there, we said, why don't you just mill it and pave all the way to the end? Same thing on Pleasant Street. It was going to be from Cherry up to Warren, and we're going to carry that all the way to the Five Corners intersection. So another thing, just trying to maximize efficiency while the crew is already there. Given the volume of work island-wide, if someone's already mobilized there, we might as well extend it as much as we can. And in that situation, like Pleasant Street, it'll make two different projects contiguous. And so that entire corridor will be repaved in short order. The other thing is our annual roadworks projects, when we have a long-term view of what we plan to do this spring or this fall or next year, for example, it has to be coordinated with this upcoming utility work. It's not just private utilities, but water, sewer, electrical work. And I put on there specifically, Mark at the water department has a lead water service replacement project in the works. So, we have to be mindful if he's going to be digging up Union Street, we're not going to pave it this year just to dig it up next year. So there's a lot of coordination that goes into the planning and eventual execution of our annual roadworks projects. And of course, what are the challenges of the work that we're doing and all the work that we have going on? One main one, of course, is that there's a really big volume of work for one asphalt plant, one asphalt paving contractor on island. Scheduling coordination, as you can see from Erica's interjections tonight, there's constant changes and there's a million things going on. For example, road work requires full or partial road closures, so that necessitates coordination with other road closures and blockings, utility connections for private work, for example, events like Daffodil and other festivals, house moves, coordination with the trucking route, NRTA, and the school bus routes, for example. There's a lot that goes into making sure that what happens and when it happens is successful. Additionally, I don't know if we did a good enough job kind of highlighting it project by project, but there are many different general contractors working on municipal jobs in the Mass DOT project, for example, and those private developments and utility companies. And so there's a lot of coordination that's required, because right now, a lot of the projects that we covered were, one is a Robert B. Auer project, one is CC Construction, one is Northern Construction, one is N&M Excavating. So there's a lot of different departments kind of driving the bus on these projects, but also a number of different contractors. And then, of course, Victor is kind of the common denominator with all of these projects when it gets time to do surface restoration and final paving. Along with that, prepping for final pavement installation is extremely time consuming and must be done properly. The saw cutting of joints and milling of keyways, adjusting catch basins and manholes and all that stuff needs to be correct, because you can put really nice pavement down, but if things are sticking up or recessed too low in the road, you'll always feel that for years to come until they're corrected. And then the other thing, the reason I put the 3 pictures of Pine Street on David's slide, for example, was just to highlight the curbing and sidewalk work and those utility structure adjustments. They're all prerequisites. So, sometimes when things change on one project, it's not easy enough for Victor to just switch gears, go to a different road, because there's a lot that needs to happen before he can actually put pavement down. You know, weather's always another thing that throws a curveball in terms of everyone's grand plans and schedules. You know, boat cancellations, we obviously don't pave in the rain. There's a lot of things that prohibit us from getting pavement done or paving projects done, for example, in the early spring and in the fall. The other thing is the asphalt plant opens typically early April. He opened the first week of April this year was kind of a slow start, and then it closes in December. So in a perfect world with perfect weather, we have about 6 months to get all of this work done because we don't do a lot of this stuff in the summer in our public roadways. Additionally, like I mentioned, in the beginning and end of the season, you know, when temperatures are too low, it's really not prudent for us to be spending, you know, taxpayer dollars on pavement that is most likely not going to hold up long term. So we just need to be really smart about what we do and when we do it. The last couple of years and this past winter as well, there have been some plant upgrades at Victor's asphalt plant, and with that comes kind of a slow start in the spring when there's inevitably some troubleshooting. And so again, something else that even on a really nice day might lead to no asphalt being produced or installed anywhere. And then one last thing I wanted to highlight is that there is a permit capacity for the asphalt plant. And I believe it's 25,000 tons a year. I don't think that we've historically been in a situation where he's reached that limit and we've just been unable to continue paving. But I put on there the airport's FY28 runway repaving, for example. If that takes up 20,000 tons of his permit capacity, then we're kind of left as a community island-wide with just what's left. So it's stuff that we need to be mindful of, even just sometimes even 2, 3, 4 years out when there's a project of that magnitude on the horizon. Go to the next slide.
Yeah, just on that one topic, if he is taking 20,000 tons, the airport gets priority? Is that how this works, or how does it work in that regard?
I don't know if necessarily the airport takes priority. I think that speaks to the importance of us coordinating with the airport to understand. And I made that number up, 20,000. I was just using that as an example out of 25,000. But it's important that we know what that tonnage is and when it's going to happen, and how does that affect his permit capacity. Because if it's a calendar year, 25,000, and they're going to do 15,000 in January, that changes what we're allowed to do in the fall, vice versa. So, we obviously just need to continue working very closely with them to understand what their plans are. I also believe that in talking with Victor, that he is working on increasing his permit capacity and potentially putting up another plant at some point in the future. I don't know how long that would take. Can't guarantee it'll ever happen, but I think ideally we as a community would have enough capacity that we wouldn't have a concern like this going forward.
And is it difficult to get another plant or to get increased capacity? Who sets that?
I believe Mass DEP and maybe the EPA. It's an air quality permit.
I got you. All right.
And so lastly, to summarize, it's this type of work is very costly. It takes a lot of time and it must be done right. There's obviously a lot of work happening right now. I think part of the challenge is that these projects are kind of converging all into their final paving phases at the same time. And some of them are quite large and they're going to take up a lot of our ability to execute stuff between now and essentially our summer shutdown. And as such, prioritizing work is critical. As much as I may love the idea of milling and overlaying, I'm going to throw out a random road like Cliff Road, we could make it through the summer with Cliff Road in the way that it is. But if Pleasant Street isn't repaved or Pine Street is gravel, that's obviously something that we need to push to the front of our to-do list this spring, because leaving some of those roads the way they are for the summer is just not going to be acceptable. As I mentioned, I think we need to continue to find opportunities to execute annual road work, maintenance projects in the summer months. And I'll give Erica another shout out because the constant coordination is necessary for effective planning, management, and execution of these projects. And we really appreciate everything she does because she's kind of at the heart of all of it. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Any other questions?
Just a comment. I think it's interesting. This is just my observation from being old and around a long time, is some of this, it's not linear. Growth isn't linear. You don't do, part of a school every year. You don't do a little bit of the roads every year, because as we're growing, you hit a point where all of a sudden you have to do it. And I think that's what we have been facing recently. I think we are facing the, sort of the cost of doing this is coming due. And, so I think that's the pressure we're under. So, and it's, it's hitting us in the amount of work, and it's hitting people in their pocketbooks. And I think that's something for us to think about as we decide, how to move forward. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Next up is the approval of the asset purchase and sale agreement for the town's purchase of the composter and transfer station, as well as the waste services agreement, which is a contract with the solid waste facility operator. So Libby's going to do a little intro.
So just the intro really just is that this is the culmination of some efforts that have been going on for several years now in advance of the expiration of the waste services agreement on November 30th, 2025. And we've had a lot of professional assistance with this, including our solid waste consultant, George Aronson of Commonwealth Resource Management, our finance director, town council, John Giorgio, Howard Matz, one of our capital program committee members, has assisted as well. He has some experience in this area. Our solid waste manager, Chris Lowe, he joined a little bit late in the process, but has been very helpful. We also engaged special counsel, Michael Leon. Michael has helped us from time to time with some sticky solid waste issues, I guess I would call them. And Chair Moore has been very involved. At one point, probably many board members have been involved off and on. I think Dawn was involved at some point, probably Matt, and other prior board members as well. So a lot of people have had a lot of input into this, and I think the culmination is an agreement that is a lot stronger than the agreement we have currently. And I'll let George, I think, is going to, after there may be some comments from the chair, George can take us through anything that is updated since the last go-around of this a few weeks ago. The idea was to present these documents to the board and have them in the public packet in case anybody had questions, input, comments, anything like that. I don't think we got any. And so George will just very high level brief review, because we have gone through this a number of times now. And then there's a vote in your packet.
So I'll just add that I'm really grateful I don't have to be a solid waste expert, because we have some really great solid waste experts working on our behalf. And as much as I've learned, it's a fraction of what this team knows and has contributed to this process. And I'll turn it over to George. George gave us a presentation a couple weeks ago, the idea of which was to present in concept the differences between the way the operating agreement and the facilities ownership is currently happening, and then really to juxtapose that against what we are proposing and what we've already decided in terms of the acquisition of the facilities. And I think that presentation, if anyone wants to, we don't need to go over that in detail tonight, but just to reiterate for the community that the acquisition of the facilities really changes the dynamic between the waste services operator and the town of Nantucket. We have a lot more control over so many elements of this, both operationally and financially, and the degree of transparency that we'll have in understanding how the facility operates and what it's costing us, and the decisions we can make to save money or change how we process waste, how we sort, how we recycle. All of those things are now much more in the town's hands, which is a substantial change from how we're operating now. And I will reiterate, as I always do when this topic comes up, my unending gratitude for this team. We are very fortunate as a community to have them. And then I'm going to hand it over to George to walk us through what we have to decide on tonight.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Okay. again, I mean, the presentation is in the packet. It's virtually the same as the presentation that I gave on April 9th, but there are a few changes that I want to point out. First of all, I guess the big change is the packet, when it went out to the select board, in my understanding, had the executable or proposed executable forms of agreement for the asset purchase and sale agreement, the APSA, which addresses the purchase and sale, price, conditions, etc. The waste services agreement, which addresses all of the services that that Waste Options would perform, and the service fee that would be the compensation for performing them in great detail. And then there's a third document which would be signed separately called the repairs letter agreement. And this went to some questions about the condition of the assets that town is purchasing. There are a couple of projects that are in process in 2025, some things that and basically a punch list of smaller things that Waste Options has agreed to take care of before the closing date. Everything ranging from inspections of the septic and removing unused oil tanks to some work on the roof of one of the buildings and a conveyor. And they're just, and even though they're involved with ascertaining the condition of the assets prior to their transfer, they're really more related to waste services. And because it's kind of a hybrid situation, the repair letter agreement serves to bridge both. It's referred to in the asset purchase agreement, but it's really an amendment both to the prior and to the new waste services agreement about expectations about some task being done between today and the last week of November, when the closing will be. So I think those are the three documents. There are a few, so all three were in the packet. We've closed them. There are a couple issues that were open on April 9th that are closed today. One of them was a question about performance bonding. The agreement, the waste service agreement, will have Waste Options put up a performance bond. One of the questions is what happens if the performance bond is not renewed, and we have a process and some options as fallbacks for security, including ultimately the pledging of Waste Options equipment to the town if necessary as security to go forward. So I think that's one of the key issues that was solved literally in the last couple of weeks. There are a few more legal issues involving handling of casualty events, indemnities, which I am certainly no expert on, and then suggest some of the detailed language affecting some of the definitions. But they're all pulled together by last Thursday, and the agreements in the packet are what we would propose to have executed going forward. There are some materials that are in exhibits. Some of them are quite voluminous. There is a long exhibit that sets forth the services that Waste Options would be performing in some detail in 8 service areas. It's taken from their technical proposal and what's known as a technical operations plan. It's over 100 pages. There's a lot of detail there. I'm always happy to answer questions, but I didn't want to overwhelm the detail in the packet. Similarly, there's a service fee agreement, which is over 50 pages based on the price proposal that Waste Options submitted that the committee of evaluators in the town evaluated in a fair bit of detail. People always ask, what's the difference in price between the new agreement and the old agreement? And because the old agreement in many ways did not define certain costs, or costs were not matched with services, it's hard to make a comparison. I think the other part of that is the town has a lot more control and responsibility, so that in many ways the agreements are significantly different from each other, but that is all fleshed out in some detail in the service fee agreement. And then, of course, there are exhibits that set forth exactly what the town is buying, and also that characterizes the town assets that the town already owns that Waste Options will be operating and maintaining. And then there are a few other smaller legal exhibits. So that's the high level of view of what the agreement is. I think that maybe the most efficient thing to do here is to open up for questions. I'm here, the attorneys, the town council are on board, and we're happy to answer questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions from the board? All quiet. Malcolm, were you getting ready to ask a question? Okay.
I was just going to make a comment.
That's, do you want to? Okay. Let's see, we have a few folks
just-
online.
Yeah, just a,
all right,
maybe not
Matt
a question,
first.
just sorry, just a comment is, some of it I think seemed, you guys had to get into quite a level of detail to address some of these. You could, looking at it, there were things like, there's materials that they own that they're going to sell at cost, that you've negotiated that they be sold at cost. There's how do you handle unacceptable waste was interesting to me, and the town gets charged if some of it gets passed and sneaks by. Like, seems like there was a lot of really details that had to be ironed out, which I just think,
I think one of the most interesting things is the transition from the old agreement to the new agreement and what that means. And so there's some facilities investments that are being made now, but the life of that investment is 20 years. So they own it now, but we'll own it next year. And so how do you share the cost of that improvement amortized over the life of it? And so, really, I could go on and on about how many complexities there are to ironing out this agreement, and hence the 150 pages of details.
Yeah, and here's the question on the repair aspect. Once they do the repairs that they're outlined for, then the upkeep is listed in the document.
Yes.
The continued upkeep is listed in the document. So this is sort of the transition is to get there, and after that, their upkeep responsibilities are detailed. So it's not going to be, oh, this is broken, Libby, get on out there and fix the roof. It's not going to be like that, right?
That's exactly right. And, and in fact, we spent quite a bit of time on exactly that point because of its importance. We tried to, just from the top down, divide the set of services into 8 service areas and cover each of them. And that's why we have a lot of detail. I think, the specific one, for example, the roof has a warranty from a third party that will be assigned to the town, so the town can make a warranty claim if there's a problem. And there are lots of other things that are being assigned along with the sale. There's a license, etc. So we've, tried to go into a fair bit of detail to make sure everything that needs to be covered is covered.
Malcolm, I'll let you come, and then I have one more thing.
Yes, I just want to comment and compliment the process. We go through a lot of difficult projects and times on this island, but the right people were on the committee and the group, which sometimes we don't always get, but this time we had the right people. It was transparent. The appropriate people got updates. So actually we're at the end and no one's yelling and screaming and making public comment and saying you should have done this or you should have done that. And
don't talk too early.
I just think this is
Don't count your
this is how everything should go.
Yeah. I agree, and that was actually when I got involved in this several years ago, that was one of the things that we really focused on, is making sure that the road to this conclusion was communicated effectively, because there's a lot of, this is like the largest contract that we have, and there's been a lot of angst about how it's been for 25 years, and so making sure that we were including the community and informing the community on the long way, as you said, it bears repeating. And now I forgot the thing that I was going to say. Oh well, anyway, it'll come back to me. Anyone else? Okay, so we have a specific motion in the packet. Oh, we do have a public question. Hang on, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Jason Grazia Day, Nantucket Current. What is the cost of the contract? What is the financial commitment that the town is making? I looked in the packet and the exhibit that refers to the service fee is just blank. There's nothing there.
Okay, I think the best place to work, Jason, the best place to look actually is at the fiscal year 26 budget, because that's going to be a transition year. And because transition will happen November 30th, December 1st. We have a situation where in fiscal year 26, July 1st through November 30th will be under the or the existing contract, and December 1st through June 30th will be under the new contract. So to make that work, we had to build up budgets for both of those periods and add them together and find a way to add them together that makes sense. And in fact, there are going to be some changes in how budgets are monitored, just because we'll have new line items and areas to accrue in this project. I mean, the budget is in the range of about $60 million per year for all the solid waste services. And that includes, as I mentioned before, not only household waste and construction demolition waste, but all those hard to manage things that we don't want in the moors, that we want to be handled properly, and that need to be recycled when we can do it, or shipped to the mainland if there's no way to handle them on Nantucket. So it really is a comprehensive list of situations that are handled within that $16 million. And I think that's broken out in the exhibits. I think there was an exhibit in the packet last time that showed some of the differences between the old and the new. So I don't know if I answered your question except at a high level, but I did the best I can at this point.
Yeah, I think that, Jason, I'd encourage you to reach out to George, because there's so much finite detail in here if you have specific questions. Yeah, okay. I guess we need to make available those exhibits.
Sure.
Somewhere online. So let's make sure that happens. Okay, so we have a motion in the packet, which I will read. It is move that the select board vote to authorize the town manager to execute the waste services agreement, the asset purchase agreement, and the repair agreement between the town and Waste Options Nantucket, all as set forth in the agenda packet for this meeting. I would accept that motion from someone.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that is unanimous. Thanks, everybody, for yeoman's work. Okay, any committee reports?
I don't have a committee report, but I had concerns a few weeks ago about the same thing that Hillary brought up tonight. And I hope that some of those things are answered, or we're going to spend a long time on it on Saturday. And I don't think any of us want to have, 4 or 5 dwellings on a lot and everything else. And so I do think, that I hope that is a clearer answer is forthcoming. So thank you.
Okay, sure. If nothing else, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. Have a good week. See you on Saturday morning to begin at 8:30.